You're listening to Talking to the Max on 87.8 FM, your Jewish community radio station broadcasting throughout Glen Eira. And this morning we're privileged to have with us the CEO of Glen Eira, Rebecca Mackenzie. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Gary.
And the mayor, Neil Pilling. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Gary.
Probably lived most of my 6+ decades, but I'm not advertising, in sort of the Bentley McKinnon area, so within the Glen Eira municipality. And for the first time ever, I think, I've seen a whole lot of residential developments going up, requiring cranes that they're so tall. We're seeing a very big change in the landscape around us. And I've also noticed around that same area a whole lot of signs on fences saying we will oppose inappropriate development. So it's become a bit of an issue. What's a bit of the background of this? Because we are seeing 4 even larger story apartment blocks going up.
Certainly you're right, Gary. I suppose we're part of it's not just our municipality, it's right across Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
Melbourne's going through the biggest building boom probably since the gold rush. 1 million people have been added on in the last 10 years, and we're seeing the effects of that, certainly down in your way, Bentley. I suppose we've, over the last 10 years, we've continued to manage that, but certainly we have been listening to residents. Recently, this year, we did a review of our planning scheme.
Right.
And residents did tell us that they were concerned about the heights coming in, the increasing height, and certainly at the last council meeting, councillors did take action, and we are proposing to introduce interim heights as part of our work in the next couple of years to better identify how high those areas should be.
Right.
And we have applied to the Planning Minister for interim heights in response to community concerns.
Right, but we've now got a belt of areas in particular, and I know whole streets really sold up because they took advantage of the developers' ability to build. I think is 4 stories the limit? What is the limit?
Basically,
moment,
around our railway stations, the immediate around our railway stations is a commercial zone that presently hasn't had. It's a small area that hasn't got height limits, but we are applying for height limits there. But further around it's like a wedding cake, 4 stories and 3 stories, and back to 2 stories in the former residential 1 zone. It's important to acknowledge, though, in Glen Eira we have one of the highest percentages of neighbourhood residential. That is single blocks, 2-storey, maximum 2-storey. That's 78% of the municipality. But yes, there are concerns around some of the development, but I suppose we've tried to manage it and contain it around our activity centres, around our public transport. We have 10 railway stations, so we're confident we can actually manage the development, the increasing population, but within a reasonable means.
Right, because I know it's. Even in my own street, there's next door to me at the moment. There's an old single house that's been knocked down. It's a nice big block of land, and they're building us side by sides there. And the street is now peppered with, over the last 10 years, I guess, a whole lot of new side by sides. I guess the issue is we're becoming, the population density is becoming far greater. We've got a lot more people there, and I guess the issue is, are we getting the resources to manage that? I know my wife's a teacher at McKinnon Secondary College, and one of their issues is space. They've probably got twice as many students as they're rated
Rebecca
for.
Answer, because Rebecca's came in as our relatively new CEO early in the year.
Yes, welcome to Glen Eira.
Thank you. I'm enjoying my time in Glen Eira.
Good.
And as part of any, I suppose, new CEO coming, there has been some restructuring around resourcing. So,
and Gary, you and your listeners would be aware that there's a strategic document that's been put together by the state government, which is called Plan Melbourne, and that looks at how Melbourne as a whole is going to actually accommodate the massive growth that Melbourne is anticipating and expecting, and certainly in Glen Eira, where for our population forecasts indicate that we'll grow by about 20% over the next sort of 15 to 20 years.
That's Glen Eira.
Glen Eira alone. So it's about how and where we actually build in some of that capacity in our areas. And certainly the focus is very much, as the Mayor was saying, in and around our public transport nodes and our activity centres in order to protect other areas of the municipality where we know that, sort of neighbourhood character is really valued. But in terms of resources and all of those sorts of things, we are repositioning
open space, open
space
like
is
that's a big issue.
It is a big issue, and what we know from the consultation that we've done with the community is that the open space that we do have is really highly valued and it's high quality. But certainly council has an intentional strategic position which is about increasing our amount of open space that we have, and council takes opportunities when it can to actually even purchase new blocks of land.
How do we do that? Because there's limited open space available.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, really.
Right.
Sometimes it's about taking, opportunities when appropriate blocks come on the market. Sometimes it's about working productively with developers where there's new developments occurring to have elements of that dedicated to open space. Sometimes it's about thinking creatively about how we work with, let's say, schools or, other municipalities just across our borders about how we get access to sporting fields, and particularly it's the sporting fields that we have shortages of. So we've got pretty good quality passive open space, but we know that our sports clubs have a lot of demand on them. They want to grow further, particularly as they extend towards providing more opportunities for women's sport and things like that.
Yeah.
And we actually need more access to facilities, which is why something like the Caulfield Racecourse discussion that's going on at the moment
I was just
is
going to
so
bring
topical.
I was just going to bring up Caulfield Racecourse because the centre of Caulfield Racecourse has always been zoned as open space, I think. But, but nobody would know that they have access to
Exactly. That's part of the problem, Gary. It's been designated for public recreation, public parkland and racing, but unfortunately there's only been one use predominantly.
Correct.
There. And certainly, as you might have seen in the media recently, there was encouraging moves by the state government to remedy that situation. So we're fully supportive of a new governance arrangement, which will, we think, address the three issues properly and give the community far more access to the centre of the racecourse. And I think we're really hopeful that those needs that Rebecca's addressed can be met. It's a huge area. It's our biggest non-used, basically, open space in the municipality. And
do I have a right to go there now as a citizen?
But you'd be quite right.
And how would I do it?
Well, it's quite difficult.
It's one of Glen Eira's greatest secrets, I think, really.
It's a lot of
fabulous
space.
facility that is there. And it's underutilised a lot of the time, because when racing's there, it's, of course, a busy and vibrant hub.
Absolutely.
But at other times, when racing's not occurring there, then actually it's this most wonderful open space.
I guess that's one of the big issues about having sports facilities there, though, is that weekends would often clash with race meetings, and I guess you couldn't hold the two together.
Not really, Gary. There's only 22 race meetings a year.
Okay.
On a Saturday. That's 22 days a year.
Right.
And in the government report just released, they recommend phasing out training within 5 years. There's currently 500 horses stabled there that train every day. That's been one of the biggest impediments to opening up the racecourse. And I think
yes, because it needs to be available
once
to horses.
Training goes, if you look at it's the only racecourse in Melbourne which has horses stabled there. Flemington, other areas they're trucked in, and certainly that's what we see moving towards. And I think there'll be a far better mixture of uses in the future. We're really hopeful and supportive of what the government, I think, we envisage will do soon.
So that's a long way down the track, obviously.
I think.
Pardon the pun.
Well, 5 years to move. Once training moves out, that opens up all the opportunities. So I suppose the community's been waiting 150 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So
we don't think 5 years is too bad in the scheme
5 years
of things.
isn't bad, but if we're growing at that sort of rate, say 10% within that time, and I guess younger families, I'm not sure. I mean, that's one of the other issues with these apartment block developments.
Yes.
Whether they, do we have an idea of what sort of families they're attracting? Are they are they older people? Are they younger families? Are they people with kids?
I think it's a mixture, Gary.
Right.
I think
we don't know proportions.
No, we don't. I suppose
we know that generally our population is increasing in terms of the number of young families that are moving into the municipality, but the thing about apartment living is it provides a diversity of options. So everything from enabling people to age in place, together with young families or first home buyers and things like that. So it's really what we're seeing is a diversity of people moving into that type of accommodation as the community becomes more diverse.
Yep.
And I suppose on development in general, Gary, I suppose there's two sides to the equation. Yes, we do hear from residents, especially in those transition areas with the developments, but also we face pressures like from, I suppose, external measures, federal population policy, state government planning guidelines, property industry, academics. The only TV interview I did as a mayor last time was defending council against calls for we had too little development going on in the area. So we're trying to get the balance right.
Yep.
I think we are achieving that, but it's an ongoing journey, I suppose.
Okay, and I guess in terms of the various wards, it's more focused in that Tucker ward.
Oh, not really. I mean,
no?
in each, there's 3 wards, 3 areas
Yep.
of council areas, and we have 3 activity centres. That's Glen Huntly Road, Elsternwick, Coonang Road, Carnegie, and Centre Road, Bentley.
Yep.
But I suppose you're quite right. You're seeing Elsternwick and
In
Carnegie.
terms of apartments in particular.
You're seeing a greater change probably down Centre Road.
Yep.
But I would suspect, 10 years ago, the same thing was happening in Carnegie and even before in Elsternwick. But certainly the measures we've presented to the Minister about putting some interim controls around Centre Road are certainly, I think, helps address that while we do more detailed work.
Okay, but it's coming a bit after there's been quite a bit of
And look, we
construction
acknowledge
going
that,
on.
and I suppose sometimes councils are accused of not listening to the community. I think we certainly have, and that's one of the key issues that came out of our consultation.
Because this might be a key issue, I guess, developers versus residents, etc. In the coming election. Now we've got an election coming up on the 22nd of October. Is that right? Council elections in Victoria.
And with everything, there's always a diversity of views as well. So while there are a lot of people in the community that are saying that they don't want massive development and all of that sort of stuff. Equally, there are people who are in council's ear saying that they do want development.
That's right.
So it's always that balancing
There's
out.
always a load of tension on those sorts of things.
And obviously, it's a bit like myself. I live in a New Murrabina station, but it's where you live. If you're in that 78% of the residential protection, you tend to hear from people on the cusp. And certainly, we're trying to react. Now, we have transition zones which try to step down from the developments, but I think we can do better, and we're working towards that.